Everybody, welcome back to the 14th episode of the Editor Cast, featuring the one and only Blizzy. I'm excited for this one. Hello, Blizzy.
Hi, how are you guys?
Alright. Well, how's your day been?
Pretty good. Just woke up about like 2 hours ago, I think. Just kind of getting
Okay.
ready to start the day. You know how it is.
Oh, yeah, it's early morning for you, it's late night for me. Time zones.
Oh man, gotta love time zones, man.
Yep. So, we're gonna get started with one of the most iconic questions of this podcast, basically, and I'm gonna have to change it up for you because you are the first guest on this podcast who is actually not a VFX artist but a GFX designer. So,
That's true.
the question that I normally ask is, when and how did you start editing? Well, of course, in your case, it's going to be when and how did you start designing?
So I've been doing this for about 3 years, at least for like a career-wise. It's been about 3 years. I kind of played around with Photoshop since I was in like seventh grade of middle school, but never took anything seriously until about freshman year of high school, where I think I was doing YouTube at the time, and I wanted to try to make some kind of personality off of YouTube. But then I found that there's a lot more noise to be like. There was a lot more noise that I was getting through the Twitter community of Fortnite whenever it was really early on. If I did like headers and stuff like that, so I kept going with headers, and then I would join like the small little team at the time. It was called like Swavy in the Fortnite console community. Um, and then I worked my way up to thumbnails, and then that's just how it. Ever since then, it's been like a snowball effect. Just keeps going like that.
All right. So, what was the thing that sparked your interest in this like field? Why did you think that this would be something that you'd like to do? Like,
Oh man, so I was a big fan of like Fortnite videos at the time. I used to watch a ton of like Ali A and shit like that whenever it was like I don't know when Fortnite was like super popular, right? Like he had all these videos and it was constantly getting recommended. So I started watching it, started playing the game. Everyone was a big fan of the game at the time. I think this was like 2.5 years ago. And I remember seeing from I think it was either FaZe Clan or if it was from Tfue where I saw this other artist's thumbnails on it. I think his name is Cuds, and he had like these 3D Fortnite thumbnails, and they just looked sick. Like I didn't know how he did them, but it reminded me of this era in the Minecraft community where people used to make renders for like and animations for music videos and thumbnails and stuff like that. And it kind of gave me the same type of vibe. And I was so interested in it because it seemed like nobody else was doing it. I could catch on early, and I just had to try to figure out how to do it. So I spent all this time trying to figure it out through different ways, and I was, there was like these scuffed ass ways everyone was doing at the time, using SFM and stuff like that. That's kind of like how everyone kind of started, was just through SFM.
okay, so I actually do know Cuds myself, but I know him from a different community than you do. So you know him from FaZe and his designing days there. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this is the same Cuds, but there used to be a Cuds in the Minecraft community who made resource packs. And
Yes, I think it is the same guy.
yeah, and I used a lot of his resource packs. I love them because I used to play Minecraft like hardcore in 2016, 2017. And I still do time to time, but yeah. So I think that's the same guy,
Man.
and yeah, we both come
Yeah,
from different communities, but yeah, he was a
that's
legend in
crazy.
both.
Seems like he's been around for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Next up, well, something that a lot of artists in general, whether it be a graphic designer or a VFX artist or a music producer, any sort of artistry work, people suffer with is the motivation to grind and keep going. Um, and so, what is it that still keeps you going after all these years and of working and being in this community?
So one thing I actually find interesting, I have a couple people that tend to ask me this, like closer friends and stuff like this as well. One thing for sure is there's a lot of artists. There's a difference between people who like to do like actual Fortnite artwork for the community, and obviously this doesn't have to depend just to Fortnite. But for example, here I'm going to use Fortnite. A lot of times artists tend to use, or it's either like they make actual artwork that's not commissioned and it's personal, like they do it all themselves, and then there's people that do only thumbnails and stuff like that. And I think one thing that makes people tend to leave the artwork scene and get demotivated the most is when they just take on commissions. I mean, it's this thing where you're constantly going off of their ideas, you're constantly doing this, you're constantly doing this. You're not spending enough time to focus on the craft that you originally wanted to get into in the first place, and you kind of leave this what you leave what you had when you first came into the community. You know what I mean? Like, you have this feeling, you have this passion for this idea, and if you stop doing it because now you have all these commissions, you tend to like fade away of why you came into it in the first place. So I think one thing for sure, at least for me, was around this time last year, I was doing mainly commissions. I wouldn't do any kind of personal artwork and stuff like that for the games that I liked, etc., like that. And there was a point to where I was almost just ready to just give up on the whole, Fortnite artwork scene in general, because I was just, you get bored of it after a while. And I think if people were to also take in making artwork scenes and personal projects as well as doing thumbnails and stuff like that, they would have this motivation to still keep going with this stuff. The majority of the time, the only motivation I usually have is to try to better my artwork and try to get to a point to where I'm really happy with it. I feel like a lot of artists tend to never be really happy with their stuff, and that's fair to an extent, but I feel like they should try to get to a point where they're semi-happy with the stuff that they're making, or else they're not going to be happy at all doing it. So I feel like if you can get to a point to where you're a little bit happy with your stuff and you feel like you're improving, then I feel like that's enough motivation, at least for me, to continue doing it.
Right, actually, that's a very detailed and like a nice answer, because most of the time when I ask this question to most people, mostly their just reaction is the support that they get. But yeah, this is a really good answer. I would definitely see myself looking back at this answer to motivate myself sometime.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So education wise, are you in college or something?
I'm actually in my senior year of high school.
Okay.
I've been doing this since my junior or my freshman slash sophomore year of high school, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I plan to go to college. I'm not sure where that's at right now, but right now I'm just kind of chilling through my senior year and then see where it goes from there.
Okay, so you're working with some really big brands right now, like the biggest in the Fortnite scene at least, and handling everything with school. And sometimes, you said you're not sure if you're going to go to college, but obviously in high school, like last year of high school especially, you have to make some decisions and everything, and you have to focus a bit on studies at least, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And so, has it been hard to balance everything with, like, being this high caliber of a graphic designer in the community,
Um.
being so well known, working with the biggest brands, and then also having to deal with real life stuff, school and other stuff, obviously?
So it's actually funny you bring that up. It's sometimes it could be tricky. Well, so my senior year of high school really isn't that bad. It's kind of a breeze for me because I recently moved, and so when I moved, uh, for example, I moved from Florida to Tennessee, and I thought that that these credits that I had would transfer and my grades wouldn't transfer, blah blah blah. And when we lived in Tennessee originally, we were living in a temporary house until we found like an actual house to live in because my parents got new jobs. And so the school that I went to temporarily, I didn't think with the grades would transfer or anything like that. Turns out they did, and I kind of got a little bit screwed over with what school I was supposed to go to when I moved to my actual house. And so I'm kind of going to this school. It's kind of like a clown college type of school at this point. It's like it doesn't require a lot of work from me, but I still can, get a high school degree and stuff like that. So with that though, when I lived in Florida and when the stuff was really kind of going all like it was really starting to blow up in my junior year, I had 6 classes and my 2 classes in the morning. I usually almost every day I would end up sleeping in because I would be up till like 3 a.m. and having to wake up at 6 a.m. every day, and I would have to just take a nap or something like a power nap in my first or second period every once in a while. And so it was like this weird schedule. So I would go to bed at 3, wake up at 6, go to school, leave school at 12, and then I have a couple online classes that I did. And so I would spend the time while doing the online classes of working on thumbnails and stuff like that. And I did that for about a year and a half straight. And then now we're about here where everything's a little more chilled out and calmed down. So
Right. So Did you ever like have a bad experience with a client because they got mad that you were off like deadline or something?
Oh yeah, there's plenty of people like that. It's there's under like sometimes it's understandable, right? Like if there's something big and it's really important to them, like I get that. But at the same time, you gotta one thing I think a lot of people tend to misunderstand is looking at a situation from both perspectives. If someone like there's a difference between someone just being late for a good reason and someone being late because they're lazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can if someone's like for example in school and stuff like that, they can't help that. And for the fact of, me having to stay up sometimes so late just to make sure that I don't have that type of excuse, that when then people still get mad, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. But you got to understand that sometimes people have school, sometimes people have to handle things that they can't do anything about, and you just have to you just have to get that and move on with it. I've had plenty of clients where I had to do something late, or if I had to leave and I couldn't handle it or couldn't get it done in time, and unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You can't do anything about it until the next day. Sometimes they're understanding, and sometimes they're really frustrating. But typically, if they're super frustrating about it, they're not someone you'd want to really work with.
I mean, yeah, that's true because, as I said, we're living in pretty different time zones, and that all comes down to because of me living in the eastern side of the world, and I'm situated in Asia, and here we have like an electricity problem and an internet problem. Like our electricity almost goes out every single day, at least for an hour or something, right?
That's got to be the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah, and the biggest part of me, like how it really affects me, is most of the time I have all my editing things because I'm an editor, and like I have everything sorted out. The edit's complete, and it's rendering, and mid-render, the electricity would go out. And now, since everything the render progress is never saved, you have to start over.
Yeah.
And just because I tell my client, okay, the render started, you're gonna have to wait like 2 to 3 hours, and then 1 hour in like goes out, I have to restart the whole thing, and then they get mad like, okay, what, you're taking 4 more hours. But that's like, okay, 1 hour was power cut, and then I had to restart the whole thing. And a lot of people are just not understanding about that. So
at that point I have to almost disclose it, like I have to say, hey, like if things go out like this, this is just how it is, but I'm gonna tell you before everything actually happens if it were to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the reason now I'm mostly only working with Middle Eastern clients where everybody has the same situation happen to them, so they can be more understanding about it. But if I have to work with somebody outside, then I tell them, okay, this is the situation, and this is this could have happened with me, and so if your work is really crucial, I can recommend you someone else. I even go to that point that I'm telling them, okay, if you really don't want to take any chances, then you can go to this guy. Like that's how helpful I try to be with them. So yeah, this at this point, but I have had really bad experiences in the past where the clients just got completely out of control and started tweeting and stuff like that.
Man,
yeah,
that's a mess. Yeah, it's good that you recommend people though, because sometimes it's like you can actually give someone. There have been times where I've recommended clients and it ends up being like a permanent client for them, and it's like it's good to see that sometimes you could almost hand someone a little bit of a career in their own to start up just by one recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I don't like to mention this at all, and I'm not gonna take any names either. But there's this friend of mine, and I got him signed to one of the biggest teams in Middle East.
Man, that's sick.
Yeah, because it was 3 a.m. The team comes to me. They're like, okay, we want this quick little video, and I'm like, okay, I can't do that right now, but there's this friend of mine, and you can ask him. And he was free at the time. He did it, even though it was 3 a.m. for him. He wasn't in bed. I was in bed, so he did the video, and then he got signed to that team.
That's
and they
crazy.
were they were really grateful, but I never really disclosed that publicly. I'm not gonna say their name either, but the person who the person themselves are probably watching this and they know who they are, so that's enough for me. But yeah, that's really the only reason I recommend people, is because I've been able to successfully build myself. Because in the Middle East, the editing scene is even smaller than it is all over the world, right? And
for sure, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so having an editor having 1,000+ followers is pretty rare to see. here.
Mhm.
And so I've built myself about 1100 plus at this point. This podcast has been insanely successful ever since it started. So yeah, I mean, with all the contacts and all the reputation I've maintained over this whole journey, I try to help others with it, and that's the best part of it.
Yeah, man, that's respectable. It's always nice to see when people actually try to use what they have and try to help others as well. Like use their base platform to help build someone else's at the same time.
So you mentioned that you're in the last year of your high school, but you don't know if you're gonna go to college or not. So is that in the context that you are actually thinking of taking graphic designing as a full-time job, as a career?
Sort of. So, I mean, I've obviously, this question obviously it's always in the back of my head, right? Like I'm always thinking, like, oh, what if this doesn't work out? What if this doesn't work out? What am I gonna do? Which is scary, but at the same time, I feel like I'm not worried. Which, in a way, I feel like I should be. I have gotten, like a couple of job offers with graphic design, so I'm not really like it wouldn't be freelance forever. But what I plan to do is try to use graphic design as like this stepping stone, right, into something else, whether it be investing into other companies, building artwork. One thing I wanted to try to do, I had the idea in the back of my head, was trying to make a studio. No idea how that would go or anything like that so far, but also would be nice to try to make more personal artwork. I've been spending a lot of time learning how to actually create character models and stuff like that in Blender instead of just doing video game art. So with that, I would try to make artwork that I could actually sell, make artwork that I could put onto like bigger cryptocurrency websites and stuff like that, like Super Rare and things like that would be neat. And try to build up my way through there. Obviously bigger ideas and stuff like that along the way.
Okay, that is a pretty cool that's a pretty cool set of ideas you have there, but the mindset, I notice, is somewhat similar to mine.
Oh,
Because
really? Do you have
I started editing in 2019. I'm not that old in the community, but I have managed to get myself a plausible platform, and I'm glad I'm getting clients. I don't have any problem with that, and I genuinely enjoy this, and that's why I want to take it as a career, because as I quote one of my favorite YouTubers out there, Mr. Who's the Boss. I'm not sure if it's actually his quote or not, but he said this. He said, "The best job you can have is your passion," and that's just something that a lot of YouTubers have. A lot of people, like a lot of legends in general, like. You take anybody who's made a big impact on the world, it's because they were passionate about what they did, and I think that's
100%.
the only reason when like you can make a change in the world when you do something with pure passion, and that's why I want to take this forward. And obviously there's those doubts in my head too, like what if it doesn't work out, if I fail, how would I treat, like how would I show myself to my family, how would, like there's a lot of stuff that goes in the back of your brain, but then at the same time, like you said, you're not worried, and the same goes with me. I'm not worried, it's just thoughts, and it's like, okay,
it's like back of your head type of stuff. It just
yeah. And then it's like I think about, okay, I'm not gonna fail, and even if I do fail, I love doing this, I'll start over, because I've had to deal with a lot of throwbacks, like not throwbacks, what is it called, like the exact term,
Step backs?
like yeah, step backs, when I've had to take a step back, gotten backstabbed by somebody, or just in general, just push backwards because of certain reasons. There were family problems and a ton of stuff, but at the end of the day, it was just like I found so much happiness when I was doing this sort of work that it was like the only sort of escape. And I don't know, it's really fun doing this, what I do, and I definitely want to continue this into the career. So it really hit me how similar your mindset was to mine. I had to mention this. Okay.
Oh, it's awesome, man, because it's like you said, like it's once you have a mindset for it, you're not worried about whether or not, if you have to start over, you have to start over. It's not like your work is going to change or anything like that, but you're still, if you still enjoy what you're doing, then it shouldn't be a big problem. And I was never the kind of guy, luckily I didn't go into, I didn't have a chance to get into like working at a restaurant, stuff like that early on, because of this stuff hit right before I was actually going to get a job at Subway. but it's like, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like I would want my work or whatever I do to be a bit more impactful than working like at a restaurant or an office building and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like I would be going as far as I could with that kind of stuff.
Definitely, I felt that too. Because yeah, I mean, I want to move on from this topic as quick as possible because there's a ton more. But at the end
Yeah,
of the day, it's like when you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're just doing it to support yourself and your family and what.
yeah,
You're not really like passionate about it. You're forcing yourself to do it. You burn out quicker, right? And yeah, that just you.
Oh yeah,
There's
you'll
no
be like
way.
fully unhappy sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, all the legends of the world, so to speak, all the people who've made an impact on this world and how it is shaped today, they were passionate about what they did. And if we're not passionate about what we did, what we do, is that's just basically coming into the world and going out, which billions of people do every single year. You need to, like, if you want to be someone who's remembered even after they're gone, it's like this is the kind of mindset I have. I want to be someone who people remember even after I'm
Yeah.
gone. And I was recently looking at Steve Jobs's like life journey thing, and how he had to deal with a lot of setbacks, that's the word.
Yeah.
He like and he came back from all of them, and every single one of the decisions he took were riskful, like starting a company and then getting fired from his own company, then starting a new company, getting back into Apple, everything. That was every single decision comes with a risk, but he took those
Yep.
risks and he executed them
You gotta
properly.
take the risk, man.
Yeah.
You gotta make, and you don't even need to take stupid risks. Like, there's a difference between taking a smart risk and a stupid risk.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you know that there's something behind it that you feel is you're a bit more confident in it, then taking that risk isn't as bad as people say it is.
Yeah, I mean, just to identify what a stupid risk is to the audience, like Blizzy explained how he wants to pursue this as a career, working with cryptocurrencies and teams and jobs and stuff. You need to have a plan behind what your dream is. You can't just blindly pursue something. You need to know what you're going to do to make that dream come true. And if you're
Exactly.
just taking that risk just because you want to and you don't have anything to back it up, then that's a stupid risk.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have a plan or some kind of like way to step your way through it to get through it.
Yeah, and there's always a way though. Like there's like you can't be like, okay, I want to do this, but there's no way I can do this. There's always a way. You just need to figure it out.
Yep, and sometimes it just hits like a left hook to your face of an opportunity. You just never see it coming, and those are always the best ones, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely true. So next up, as an artist, another artist problem, because well, this is literally named the Editor Cast. It's mostly based upon the problems an artist faced. What the heck? I am okay. An artist faces, guys. All right. So the next topic here is creative blocks. Have you ever experienced a creative block?
Oh my god, man! Every day, there's always a good part of the day where I just cannot do anything.
Like so, okay. So you're a 3D artist, and then you make models. You pose them. You rig them. Do you rig your own models?
Sometimes it depends on it. So one thing I like to do is I like to, like, for example, I had this piece that I did of a Billy and Mandy characters. It depends on the certain things in it. Like, I don't have a full character rig. I could if I wanted to, but I feel like it's a bit too much time consuming for what I needed it for. And so what I typically will do is I'll pose it. Like, for example, the hands were completely rigged on their own, but the rest of the body, I mean, didn't even need real rigging. So I just kind of left them. I posed them through the reference, and so I left it like that.
So okay, so what's the part that you mostly find yourself stuck on? Like, is it the posing? Is it the final touches in Photoshop? Is it the lighting? What
Oh,
do you seem to have the most trouble with?
it's the start. A lot of times I feel like it's like this thing in the back of my head, like, oh, how am I gonna do this? How is this gonna work? And it's like, if you just kind of, one thing I think a lot of artists struggle with too is they start it and they don't like how it starts and they just stop and they leave it and they don't do anything with it again. And it's like, it's funny that I typically will just say, like, oh, trust the process. And it's funny because that saying is almost as true as it gets. You can't judge your artwork, you can't judge a video off of just the first minute or the first hour of you working on it. It's never going to be what you imagine it as in the beginning. But if you were to stick through it, and you were to constantly keep working on it, even though you were a bit unhappy at first, you could have one of your favorite videos or favorite artworks you've made in quite a while. There's plenty of times where I'll be super unhappy. Like for example, I had this piece, the Henchman Reimagined piece of the Fortnite artwork. That piece I will almost scrapped like 3 times. I didn't even want to work on it anymore. There are so many portions of it, so many revisions that I had to go through of like this angle that I could not get, and there were so many times where I just could not do it. And I just gave up for like a couple of weeks and went back to it. So you just need to stick through it. Once you stick through it, you should be able to. I feel like people should judge their artwork after they finish up with everything that they're doing, and then figure out, okay, what if I need to change this? What do I need to change this? And then they'll probably be more happy with it than when they started.
But I feel like that's one mistake. That's true, definitely. But another mistake a lot of us make, including me, I'm guilty of making this mistake myself, is overthinking what you're gonna do before even starting it. If you think about it too much, and you're not gonna be able to start it, and that's just gonna be wasting time. I feel like when you start working on something, you just go in the flow. It just happens.
Exactly. Yeah, you kind of just ride the wave.
And so don't ever just keep thinking about the thing. Start something. You're gonna it's gonna work out. That's my personal experience, at least. All right.
Also, I tend to Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you can go.
One thing I was gonna say as well is if you break it down, it can be a lot easier than you'd think. So for like certain character models and stuff like that, what I would tend to do is I would take the characters and I'd look at the shapes of what they are, right? So like if there's like a cylinder leg or a sphere head, if you take it down and you decompose the character for a second or the piece and you say, okay, well this is this and this is that, you can kind of put it all together in the end, and it might be a lot easier than if you try to do it all at once. And also I think if you look at a piece of artwork that you're trying to make or an idea that you're trying to make, if you put things on a step, one thing that I always kind of went by is if you put things on a stepping stool, or if you put it on this pedestal of its own, and it's like, oh, this is so great, and there's no chance that I could ever do this. There's a good chance you never will. If you look at it and you take time to realize, like, hey, like this is easily possible, especially for someone like me. If you look at it like it's not that big of a deal, you'll probably achieve it better, or have a better chance of achieving it than if you looked at it like it was impossible. So that's one thing I always try to do.
That is really, really true. Okay, so next question is a bit of a subjective question, obviously. But this was asked in one of the viewer question segments, and I just loved it, so I added it to one of the topics of the podcast, which is, what was your first big client, first big break, so to speak?
Oh man. So I actually, I don't know if you know what Chronic is. It's like a team and stuff like that.
I don't know.
I've been with them. I've been friends with Shaw and all of them for, oh my god, probably like 2.5 years now. Because they were like the first guys that helped me break into like an actual career. But the first ever actual big client I had, because I was working with Shaw and stuff like that. Like I watched them get to 100,000 subscribers. I watched them get to 200,000 subscribers. I was around with all that stuff happen. But for an actual client outside of them, the first biggest client I ever had was actually Formula.
LG Formula? No.
Yeah.
Actually, he's in 1% now, right?
Yeah, 1% Formula. He had the series that he did on his channel. It was called Road to Trick Shot, and I did the thumbnails for that thing, and I started a little bit of a trend on its own of like these lightning sniper thumbnails that people were doing.
Okay, so it seems like you had an easier transition to working with more famous brands and deals because you had friends in that category. But okay, so this is the question I tend to ask people. What did you have any mess ups in this project? Did you like mess something up when you're off client
or just in general?
No, just like in general. If it can be a thumbnail, it can be the deadline, something when projects like these mean a lot to artists like us. And when something like that happens, you don't want to mess it up. So did something like go wrong?
Let me see. Well, there have been times where I've done stuff, obviously not specifically to Formula, but there have been times where I've worked with people in like Tensor or Apex, and sometimes I just make stuff that isn't properly what they were looking for, and unfortunately, it kind of gets in the way of like it won't be what they're looking for, but I'll also be a little bit late on the deadline trying to fix it up, and so it'll be kind of like this huge mess.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. It's always kind of different, but for the majority of parts, I haven't really been like too late on a lot of projects. But yeah, I mean, like there are most likely been plenty of times where I've messed up on like a deadline or something like that, or like the artwork itself. But for the life of me, I can't think of too many times where it's been like that big of an impact where I could remember it.
Yeah, well, the problem is I got my first big client, so to speak, in September, and it was an organization. It was an Arabic organization with like 50,000 followers at that time. Right now, they're at 200,000, so they like blew up.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like my first big client, and I received their clips. I'm working really hard. I'm like, okay, I gotta impress these guys and stuff. And the video works out perfectly. Everything is set. And the day of the delivery that I had to give the video over, my internet, like I said in this region, the internet goes out.
Oh,
And the problem
damn.
is, normally the internet is just like a disconnection. It comes back after 5 minutes, hardly. But the problem that day was that the wire that was connecting my modem to like the whole network outside, and that wire broke, and so I had to wait 4 days to get that fixed. And I had to
Oh my
use
god.
yeah, I had to use my 4G data to upload the clips, and obviously they're a big team. They needed revisions, so I had to like upload that on mobile data and then get feedback from them, change it up, send it again. I had like to do like the harshest part was it was like 3 or 4 revisions. And the biggest problem was the final render. When everything is fixed, the render kept crashing at 38 seconds into the video.
Oh my god. That's
Yeah.
fucking awful. Jesus.
Yeah.
See,
So.
there's been like times it's like it's literally the most stressful thing in the world doing
Mhm.
that type of stuff and it going wrong.
Because it's like, okay, so it's a big organization. There's potential that they recruit you. It gets you a lot of recognition, and you don't want the first impression to go bad. And it was working out perfectly. Just literally the last day, everything went completely wrong. And but yeah,
Complete left turn.
the manager was actually like a really strict person. Like, I said, like they did like 3 to 4 revisions. They wanted everything to be perfect. But for some reason, he was really, really cool about that stuff.
Oh
So yeah.
man.
I mean, I don't know. He's probably not watching this, but shout out to Zinger Supreme, one of the coolest guys I've worked with. Yeah. Okay. Moving on from this topic. So you say in 2017 when you started this, everybody was doing SFM and stuff. What software did you start?
So it's funny, when this all started, I should have been on SFM when it started, but I actually used well, a lot of times people when they did Minecraft stuff would use Cinema 4D, which was like this other 3D software. But there was the thing about it, when you would make stuff in it, you would typically a lot of times people would use this thing called Octane Render, which is like the way to make it the render engine for it. So
Yeah,
there's
I'm
a
aware.
3D program, and so you got the 3D program or the render engine for it. I didn't use that. I didn't know what that was at the time, and I had no clue, right? So I used the actual viewport render of Cinema
Oh.
40 to do it. Yeah, so it looked scuffed beyond belief all the time. And I had no idea how to fix it. And then I met this guy named Lerdo, who was this big thumb. Me and him kind of like, we were probably the 2 biggest thumbnail designers at the time, besides like Cuds or ADL, in the community. And so he showed me SFM, and then I kind of worked my up through that. But the Cinema 4D stuff, man, yeah, I still have some of it, and it's just nightmare fuel.
Okay, I mean, I know about 3D. I've been learning 3D for a while now, and I know how horrible that render is. And unfortunately, I can't use Octane even if I want to, because I don't have an NVIDIA graphic card, and Octane, at least for now, is NVIDIA only. They did release an
Yeah.
Octane X version, but that's only for Macs, to support
Oh
AMD on
man.
Macs, and I'm on Windows on AMD, so that's pretty bad. I'm
Yeah.
setting up for an RDX 3060 Ti right now, so let's hope that works out.
Ooh.
But I want to
Hell
get
yeah,
more
man.
into 3D animation in specific. But yeah, that hurt just using the viewport.
Then I would send the whips, like the work in progresses, to these guys. Not even through a screenshot. I'd use my iPhone and take pictures of it
Oh.
from the monitor, and I'd send them the whip, and it just you couldn't
Hmm.
even tell, man. It was it was such a mess.
Well, I mean, everybody watching can take a lesson. I mean, you all start somewhere, right? I mean, there's
Yeah, exactly.
thousands of people today that look up to you and how you design, and they want to be like you. And you, like, I mean, everybody watching, you can see we all start somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I have no idea why. I never really understood like how some people could look up to. I guess like I always find it mind blowing when people would say that they look up to me or something like that because it's like I'm just a person that does 3D stuff in my desk. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not I'm not doing anything crazy, but still to there's still some people, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the first time someone said this to me, it was about 4 months ago. I still remember the
Hmm.
day, legit the day. And that was actually the video that came out. This video that I just talked about with the big project.
Yeah.
That video, when it came out about 4 to 6 months ago, because there were two videos that I did for the team, and he commented under one of those, like after one of those, and the guy DMs me. He says, "I want to be like you, and you're so good." And the guy had, I mean, I think he had like 200, 300 followers, but that, even like that was such a, it was like, what? Why? How does this? I am.
No, it's crazy. And whenever someone says that, I mean, even to this day, it's like it just feels surreal. Like
Mm-hmm.
it feels surreal that even though you might not know them very well, they know a ton about you and look at your stuff all the time, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about.
Exactly. Like it's. I mean, I had 1,100 people following me, and I didn't realize that until that guy DM'd me. I had like 900 at the time, but the guy DM'd me, and he was like, "Okay, I look up to you," and I started thinking about it. I was like, "Okay, this guy." All right, and there's 900 people who specifically clicked that button to follow me and see my work, and that just like that
Yeah,
was like crazy to me.
it's
Um,
nuts.
hmm And I mean, in your case, you're on 39,000 right now.
Yeah, I honestly I have no clue how I've even gotten this big. It's crazy to think I know I think I'm the second biggest Fortnite 3D artist there is in the community now. But
hmm
it's like I don't understand where everyone came from.
Wait,
Like I
who's the
guess it's from
first
like
biggest?
the
Is it
concept.
Timtor?
No, it's hold 1 second.
Because as far as I know, you're the biggest. I mean, I discovered you a bit ago when I was actually looking for guests on the podcast, and um, yeah, somebody just said I should invite you, and I was looking to get my first graphic designing art a guest on the podcast. So
Okay, sorry, I had no clue where I was. The first person I think I was bigger than him at the time, but the new guy who's at the top, his name's Denny. He's
okay,
like a big concept character artist for Fortnite stuff. But super cool guy though. Makes
so
a lot
is he
of cool
officially
stuff.
working with Fortnite?
No, he just has a couple skins that have gotten in the game, but he's not like an
Oh,
employee or anything like that.
okay. That's like Reddit stuff, right? Like a lot of people in Reddit get like their recommendations
Yeah,
or stuff featured in the game. Actually,
it's like it's like
it's like our
well the
injustice.
way yeah it's exactly it's weird how especially for the Fortnite side of stuff the community is so kind of split in two. You got the pro side, which is typically from like a lot of us where working with pros or working with or editing for pros or stuff like that, and then you have this art side that's like all artists all talk about skins all the time and stuff like that are like really invested into the game itself, so it's like the split between the communities. um and so that's where a lot of the skin concepts that come into the game are typically from.
Uh huh. So, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would like to know the answer to this. Have you only worked with Fortnite? Like, because you started in
No.
2017, that's when Fortnite came out, and
So I'm mainly known for Fortnite stuff, but I did Minecraft beforehand. I wasn't big in the community though or anything like that. I was just kind of like messing with it on my own. But I've done I've worked on, like real life thumbnails. I did a lot of Valorant artwork too. Um there's Valorant stuff, there's Fortnite stuff. I've done some Modern Warfare, I've done Destiny stuff. Like it's just mainly known for my Fortnite artwork.
all right. Um, all right. So I'm gonna discuss A couple final topics before we get into the viewer questions because we are 45 minutes into the
Oh
40
man,
minutes. Okay.
crazy.
Yeah, that felt like nothing.
I know, right?
All right. Next up, what I had is yeah. All right. So, if you could go back to when you started designing, what is one tip that you'd give to yourself? Like, there's one thing you go back in time, you tell yourself, "Don't do this" or "Do this."
Mm, if there's one thing I could go back to tell myself, probably to spend more time in the actual. Well, one thing I always stressed about before was like getting this certain lighting and getting this certain thing to look this way. And I spent a lot of time doing I would do over amounts of Photoshop work on it when I didn't need to. I think one thing I tell myself is to focus on doing more stuff in the actual 3D software rather than doing it in Photoshop. And I think if I were to do that and listen to that, I would probably benefit further to where I am today instead of just worrying about where I am. So I think if I could, I'd probably just tell myself to focus on the 3D aspect more because it goes like the workflow is like you do the 3D render, then you do the Photoshop, then you send the thumbnail. So if I could focus more on the 3D part of it and improve on that, I think I would have been a lot further in this 3D stuff.
Okay. That sounds really nice. All right. Okay. So finally, there's this basically a topic in the podcast where it's solely discussing about the education system of like if whether as an artist do you need the education like with film schools or with graphic designing degrees if they exist. I don't know, but I do know film schools exist. So like you said, if you do end up going to college, let's say, would you take the degree for film or for graphic designing or whatever that is, or would you just study something else?
No, I wouldn't take it. I would probably do something else, whether it be some way if I could do something with I don't know, something that would help me learn. I don't want to go in like a business major, but something that helped me learn more about having a business and stuff like that. I feel like would be more useful because I feel like there's been so many times, like for example, especially in high school, I knew kids that took Photoshop classes. I knew people that took graphic design classes and stuff like that, and it's like the stuff they were teaching is not, that was like the first day I learned how to do it in Photoshop, and they'd be doing it for weeks. It's like it's such a slower process, and it's so much more of like it's things. It's almost like common knowledge for people who taught themselves. And when you go into a class for it, a lot of times they'll just be sitting there almost ready to just fall asleep because it's just things that you already know. Um, I wouldn't go. I don't know specifically for 3D. I feel like if anything, 3D might benefit it more. But for like Photoshop and stuff like that, you'd be better off teaching yourself through YouTube tutorials, in my opinion. I don't see a big help in it. Maybe to learn certain fundamentals that might help your own career, like if you need to know typography and stuff like that, and learning how to properly place text into a photo. Maybe that, but other than that, I don't see a real point to going to school for it.
Okay, and if there was so like do you believe that you can make a career as a graphic designer without having a degree in that?
Today, yes. I don't know how it would have been, 5 years ago, but right now, I don't think a single person for jobs is going to look at whether or not you passed a certain class or something like your education, or if you're qualified. Like I knew people, especially for editing or graphic design. You know how like you have to be sometimes in school if you take an online or if you take a class that has to do with that stuff, they make you get certified in it. It's like this
Uh-huh.
test that you have to take. Half the people that got certified in it didn't even know what they were doing half the time. They just followed the certain, like I feel like with creative stuff, you don't really need to follow rules. That's the idea of creative
Yeah,
freedom.
that is
And
the
all of
idea.
these people just followed the rules completely, like one to one. So when you get certified, what do you do from there? It's not like they're going to be telling you if a client tells you go crazy with it, be creative. What the hell are they supposed to do? They don't know how to be creative.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea that I have of this too because I like the way of learning with the internet because it's just like what you want to learn. You search that, you watch just that without any rules, without having to practice the same thing for 2 weeks for no reason at all. That
Mhm.
is the more objective, no, that is the more like faster and the more efficient learning process in my opinion. Because I mean, obviously, when I ask somebody or a teacher why they teach the same thing for 2 weeks when there's no specific benefit of it, they're like, okay, you're a fast learner, some people take time. And I think that's why online learning or YouTube is better, because you
Yeah, because
can
you're on your
everybody
pace.
can adjust to their own pace of learning.
Exactly.
So it's like, if someone is a fast learner, let them be a fast learner. Don't hold them back for no reason. And that's
Yeah,
why
because
I
then
feel
what the
like,
hell are you supposed to do? You
yeah,
know?
and I feel like this education system needs a ton of changes where you can give a test anytime you want. You don't have to match with the 40 kids that you're with and give one test on the same day. You should be able to give it whenever you feel that you can give it.
Yeah, and I don't think for creative aspects like editing or designing or stuff like that, I
Yeah, you
don't
don't even
think
need to be.
a test should not justify whether or not you're good at it. What should justify whether or not you're good at it is the work you provide.
No, but
Um,
similar stuff applies with other education aspects too. I mean, I know we were talking about editing and stuff, but
yeah,
even English classes, let's say, because English is not the native language with me nor any of my friends, and like you have English classes. Like right now, I'm in the 10th standard year, right? I'm in the British education system. The British education system is implemented here, right?
mhm,
And I'm in the 10th standard, and I'm still learning about the like the grammatical rules of English, and I can speak English fine
yeah,
without learning those rules, but I have to learn those rules for no reason. Like
yeah. No, it's like I feel like once you get to a point, it's like, what am I doing here? Like there's so
it's
many things I
funny
could spend my time on doing.
because like okay, so I have like a few classmates of mine know about this whole YouTube thing and the podcast, and one of them listened to the podcast once, and they were like, oh my god, you have such good English skills, and they were going crazy because
Really,
yeah, I mean,
that's crazy.
they were going crazy because we're limited in our education system in our society with how frequently English is spoken and how it's taught. Because like at my age, most kids in my class are 17. I'm 16 years old, and just now we're learning grammatical rules. And speaking
Mhm.
English fluently is not a concept that is like, you should be able to do that by 10 or 12. No. And why I'm good at it is mostly because I loved reading. I loved
Yeah,
reading novels, I watched movies, and like, I don't think even 10% of the English fluency that I have is because I went to school. It was all because of
yeah.
reading,
It's
because of speaking English, because of watching videos. Like, ever since I think I started watching YouTube when I was 11, and I watched a lot of Minecraft back in the day with Dan TDM and stuff.
yeah.
And I think that's where I learned my English from. That's where I got my fluency from. And even like now, I stutter at times. But when my friends listened to this English, they were like, "Oh my God, you're so good at English." I'm like, "No, what?" So yeah, this
It's like if as long as you're around it, once you're around it a ton, then like if you watch a ton of videos and stuff like that, like you said, if you're around it a lot, I feel like you'll learn a lot faster too.
So yeah, I mean, just the general conclusion: the education system is really messed up. It needs a ton of fixing.
It's scuffed, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to not make it scuffed because it's different for every situation.
Yep.
It's like how I don't know. I say that
It's
it's bad, but if
subjective.
they ask me how to, yeah, if they say it's bad and they say, okay, well, how are you gonna fix it? I'm not gonna give them a good answer. I have no clue. Like
Yeah.
but I will tell them that it's still a bit. There's a lot of flaws in it, but for the life of me, I couldn't tell them how to fix it.
Exactly, like we discussed just now. Like, okay, if somebody is a slower pace of learning, they should be able to give the test after, and I should be able to give the test whenever I want to. Now, with that, how would they process all the information? Like, okay, this kid passed the test. When do we promote him? When do we promote this other kid? It's all gonna be a big mess, and we know that it's wrong, but we don't know how to fix it, and
Yeah,
that's the main problem. Okay,
yeah.
so that was the last topic that I had for the podcast. Now, moving towards some of the questions that your fans and followers had to ask. So the first one comes by Hawk Rish. He asks, what came to his mind before designing the Henchman reimagined masterpiece?
Oh man, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, but the the idea of it was kind of like it's a big scaled project. That was probably like the biggest piece I've ever made. Um, with the amount of characters that are in it, the amount of detail that's in it. You could look at any corner of it and still look at different things because there's little Easter eggs all over the place that still people haven't found. Um, but I think the main thing that I was trying to do with it is try to say, like I have not seen a bigger piece than that. And that's not coming from some kind of ego or something. I just have never seen someone put more characters than that in a piece. And with a 2080 Super and an i9 processor, it took me 2 days to struggle to find a way to render that thing. Um,
Odd.
yeah, that was a mess. There was so much in it. I had to readjust it. I had to like make a lot of things more optimized than it was. But when I made this other piece of this like brute hanger kind of piece, there was a lot of people really liked it, and I wanted to make something because that was big scaled as well, and I wanted to make something that was even bigger, and so that was the idea of the henchman idea, to make a robot out of it and do all this stuff. So that's kind of like where it came from, the inspiration.
Okay, ironically, the next question comes from Wally PX, and he asks, what was his first favorite piece to date? No, what was his favorite piece to date? So now he just answered that. The Henchman
Yeah,
Reimagined.
yeah, that's
Next up,
probably why.
the same person has three questions. The second question he asked was, will he ever resume speed arts on YouTube?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I would love to, but it's such a hassle, and there's not like it's not really. I'm not looking for a return of it. But I don't know. It seems like it's a bit of a hassle at the moment because I don't even have enough time to edit it and record it and stuff like that. Um, the recording part's not the problem, but editing it, finding good music for it, and getting this, and up, it's a bit of a mess to organize. So I feel like in the future, if I were to ever actually get it more settled and organized, then sure, I'd totally bring it back. But for now, I just don't have the time to figure out how I would organize it.
Alright, and the third and final question by Wally is tips to average 3D designers.
To average 3D designers. Oh, to average. Okay, I thought you meant like to average something. I was so confused. Um, so tips of anything. One thing I always said with people was if you can, a lot of times right now, the big popular thing in 3D design for Fortnite stuff is to do thumbnails. If you can try to do some artwork pieces as well, some personal pieces, stuff like that, it would make your work 10 times better. Because you spend time actually making things that are outside of the rules of this green grass, blue sky background, which for some reason everyone's accustomed to now, and I'm not a fan of it at all. I feel like there's no creativity with it. And I feel like if people tried to make, scenes again and artwork like people used to when the community was first starting to be a thing, I feel like they'd be able to really improve on their artwork and, take the next stepping stone up in being an artist in this community. As well as that, as one thing that I was really annoyed of whenever I did this stuff was for artwork and stuff like that, or for thumbnails, it's okay to take inspiration from it. I mean, a lot of times people get mad if you take heavy inspiration from it, but as long as you take inspiration and put something else on it to say it's yours, it's not a problem. You need to use, if you need to, and if you want to, you could always use other artists' stuff as stepping stones of your own. And I think some people need to understand that that's a thing and that they can't get mad if someone does it. A lot of times these artists, they fight in Twitter threads and stuff like that. Oh, he cloned me. This guy's thing looks remotely similar. Now this guy is just completely copying me. Like obviously it's okay if it looks somewhat similar, but people, I feel like, have too much time on their hands to be pressed about things like that instead of just trying to better their artwork and stuff like that.
Hmm? I mean, yeah, there's definitely been times, even with being an editor, there's been effects that have been cloned and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this many times in the past. A lot of my effects are inspired from other editors that inspire me, but I always try to give my own touch to it. There's always something
Exactly.
that they didn't do, but I did.
Exactly. As long as you add something to it.
Yeah, the origin of the effect was from that specific person, and I'm actually really nervous about this kind of stuff. Like, even with this podcast, the idea came to me because I saw the T3C podcast. If you know what T3C is,
I'm not completely sure, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, T3C was used to be one of the biggest, not one of the biggest, it was literally the biggest editing community out there. It was owned by Enigma, the guy who is now editing for Liquid and stuff.
Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Yeah, so that guy, he's actually been on this podcast. But
Oh really?
uh-huh. But yeah, that like this podcast, like the idea came to me when I watched that podcast, and even though like the idea of making a podcast is really general, I still went to Enigma and I asked him, "Can I do this?" Even though like making a podcast isn't copyrighted or anything, but I'm just really nervous about this stuff in general. So I did ask him
Yeah.
if I could make this podcast a thing, and a lot of my friends found that really stupid, but I still did it.
No, I feel you. Yeah, you just gotta be careful.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you gotta remember, like, people don't own with thumbnails and stuff like that too. Like, people don't own it; they just were the most popular for it, and that's the thing people need to understand is that you can like a great example is I had some problems with this guy who obviously I'm not gonna say names and stuff like that, but it was like this before and after like idea for like thumbnails people would post. It would be like the sketch concept before, and then like you'd show the thumbnail afterwards. And so this guy was like complaining to me. He's like, "Oh wow, like you're copying. I did this first." It's like, dude, like you don't own that idea. It just so happens that you were the
Yeah.
first one that made it popular. Like
No, like
that's
even
been, I'm
like
sure it's been on for ages.
before and after scenes are really common. I mean, you search up any production house, production teams that have their own
Exactly.
websites. Everybody does before and after scenes. That's nothing
Yeah,
new.
so it's like people need to get off their high horses, in my opinion, and,
Like
and
even in Adobe
instead of working on their ego.
Lightroom, there's a specific button, like there's a hotkey that you can use to check your before and after. It's literally implemented into the software.
Yeah.
So,
It's like people need. I feel like people just need to get off their high horses instead of working on your ego. Work on your art.
Definitely. Next question comes from SK. He asks, "What advice would you give to young creators slash editors, well, artists in general, let's say?"
Yeah. For younger people, if you're, one thing with my parents, obviously I don't know a single creative where their parents were fully supportive of it the whole time. This stuff is a skit. This stuff is a risk. Everyone knows it's a risk, but they still take it because there's a chance they can make something big out of it. And I wish more parents would be supportive of it. But again, like if you don't have people telling you it's not going to happen, then I feel like it won't motivate you as much as if everyone were just perfectly fine with it.
No, but
And I feel like
all right. So, like
ahead.
my personal experience is I've been working on this for 2 years now, right? 2019 May was when I started. Almost 2 years
Yeah.
at this point, in 2 to 3 months. And the whole time, the whole last 2 years, I didn't have any support from them, from my parents, and
Yeah.
they were completely closed to the idea that this could be a career. But recently, I proved to them, like I had these big opportunities. I made a name for myself in the community. I had big teams come to me, approach me for work and everything, and I showed them all of that. And when I saw that, then they realized, okay, this is something that can be done. So when someone asks me, okay, I don't have my parents supporting me, the simple thing that I can tell you is prove to them that it is something that is
Be
possible.
your own fan. You gotta be your own fan. If you're not your own fan, then you're never gonna have real, actual people outside of just you. You're never gonna at the beginning of it. You're never gonna have support. You might even have people make fun of you for it at first. There's always been times where, I mean, like I don't know. I've experienced a good amount of problems with that. But at the end of the day, if you start you just work on it by yourself, focus on it by yourself. If you make good enough stuff and you're happy with it, and then all of a sudden these bigger people are like, "Whoa, like you're really good at this stuff." Now you have a point to prove. Now you can be more than just this, I guess, person or this. It's more now than just this idea of like, just for fun. You could make something really big out of it.
Yeah. And one of the funniest, not funniest really, but one of the discussions that I had with my father when this was like when I showed him I'm talking about back in December when I like told them everything about the podcast, about the work that I'm doing. I showed them everything, and he was like, okay, right now it's your passion, it's your hobby, you don't have to make money for yourself, my parents support me and everything. And they're like, okay, when you have to make this a job, it's not gonna be as fun and as things are right now. Like, you're gonna have to actually be serious about stuff, and you have to take that into consideration. That's what my father said to me, because he said, like, it's not going to be always this easy.
Exactly. Yep. My dad's the thing. You gotta have a backup plan. You don't know if you don't. I'm sure you don't want to be an editor or thumbnail designer your whole life. It's like you don't understand. Like, you don't have to be. Just use this as a stepping stone.
Well, what I had to tell him was, what I said in reply was basically that everything has that, like, no job is easy, and if the job that I'm doing is the one thing that I'm passionate for, isn't it going to be better for me than if I was just doing a generic job that I didn't even like? It would be even worse because it's hard and generic that I don't like to do. And I mean, I think that was like what like said my dad was like, okay, yeah, he knows, he actually at least thinks about what he's doing. Because I mean, a lot of parents, as far as I think, is they just underestimate. They're like, okay, it's a kid, he didn't properly think. And yeah, and so when I told my dad that, he was like, I think what he realized was that I actually thought about this properly, and that's when he became more accepting about this. So yeah. Okay. Next question that the same guy asked. He says, "What do you look for in a nicely edited video?" So this was something I wanted to ask, but I left with the viewer question section. I was always curious. How does a graphic designer look at, like, what do you look for in a video? Like, I mean, obviously you're not a video editor, but you're still an artist. You still have more knowledge than an average viewer.
So am I looking into? Is this for, like, if I look into videos, or is this for, like, thumbnails?
Videos.
Because for videos, honestly, one thing I'm not a big fan of, and this is just me, is I don't like the constant, like, a lot of editors, especially when they start off, is they do these zooms constantly, right? Like they just, the whole screen is like jumping like a trampoline park, the whole video, right? I can't do that. Maybe it's just because I'm a bit older, but I can't focus on that to save my life. I feel like some of that could be good. One thing I love how T-Wop's editing is, and I'm sure he's probably up there as like one of the top tier editors in the community. But see, he adds, what I like is that he can add in these certain jokes that correlate just specifically to this one video. Whether it be like, well, I think one thing he did was really cool was he had like this iPhone pause in the middle of the video, like a low battery thing, just to mess with everyone. Or if it correlated to like one of Tifu's jokes or something like that. Like it's, if you spend the time to make sure that it's not this generic thing that can go to every video and instead is more unique to that specific video, I feel like it'll have more impact on the viewership to come back to that same video again just to watch it for that certain part. So I feel like for an editor, I would like to see more people add in specific things just for portions of the video instead of just having a generic thing for everything, if that makes sense.
I mean, I sort of agree with you. The thing is, like you said, the zoom ins and the jumping around of the video, it's like a video needs to have effects, but those effects need to be executed well. They should
Exactly.
have that subtlety to keep the motion of that video going properly. If you ruin the flow of the video just because you want to add an effect, then the effect is to decorate the video. And if you're gonna ruin the video with the effect, then it's not worth it. And
yeah, it's not worth it at all.
That's why I scrap a lot of effects that I think of. Like, I have this cool idea, I do it, and then it's not how exactly I visioned it, and then it's like, okay, it's not actually adding to it. It's basically making it worse. And just for the sake of being called a creative guy, I'm not gonna ruin the flow of my videos. So I just remove that. I scrap that.
Yeah, I feel you. So yeah, stuff like that. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong, but everyone can add a zoom effect. Everyone can toss in a bunch of effects, but it's the people who stand out are the ones that can put it in the right spots, that can tell when it's not supposed to be there, when it is supposed to be there. Those are the people that stand out,
Next question comes from Jarex himself. He asks, how to come up with a creative idea of your own. So we discussed about creative blocks, but what do you do to overcome those creative blocks?
Yeah, it's it's funny the way I do stuff. Well, one thing I like to look off of is, at least for ideas, two best places I've found for graphic design inspiration is one is a website called ArtStation, and two, Pinterest. Pinterest is like the mother lode of cool ideas and concept ideas that could help make or shape your ideas into reality. Um, and so one thing, it's funny that this happens. If I ever get a creative block, it's so weird. But if I were to, I go through, what I'll do is if I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, I'll take 10 minutes to look through an ArtStation or Pinterest of the search results that relating to my post that I want to make. Then after those 10 minutes, I'll take a shower and I'll sit there and just let my thoughts just kind of sit through them. Like, I feel like, for me at least, finding a way to clear your head is what's going to fix the creative block. And for me, I guess taking a shower is just the easiest way to get rid of like the block. And I don't know. It's just that's like the easiest way for me to figure out what I want to do. So I'll literally just there's times where, like, especially for like certain pieces, I'll end up taking like 3 showers in one day just because I need to think and I can't focus on what I want to do. So I'll end up just taking like 3 showers, think of what I want to do, make sure I have it all figured out in my head, and then it makes the whole process a lot smoother instead of just this choppy, half-assed idea that I had in my head that I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, that's actually some really good advice. I could use that. I could like. So this is what I do with all the questions that I ask people. If they're subjective, right? If they're like if they vary from person to person, what I do is when the guest is answering, in this case you, I'm actually applying that to myself, and I'm like, okay, would I use this? And yeah, I loved your like explanation of how you do things. I would definitely do something like this myself. I sometimes even do like where the break part or taking a shower part that I already do. But yeah.
No, it's like it's some black magic stuff, man. I swear, it's like it'll fix everything for some reason.
Definitely. So the next question comes from Skane, and he said, no, actually, yeah, he says, how and why did he start graphic design? This is the first question that we discussed, the first topic. So if you somehow missed that, just go back. Next question comes from the man himself, Elijah Jackson. I actually didn't I was shocked when he commented. More people know him by Hawk's Nest. So yeah, he asks, who are some people that you have found/find extremely helpful or inspiring for 3D work?
Oh man, I have a couple of people that I just like seeing their work. It depends on the field. For Fortnite 3D stuff and a little bit of character modeling, one person that I always looked up to was this guy named Christian. He goes by Yomanova now. But at the time, he was by this guy named Liquid RT. That was like his handle that he had. That guy has artwork that was made 2 years ago that it still keeps up to date, quality wise to this day. I don't know how, especially for Fortnite stuff. I don't know how he was able to. He just kind of came to this community out of nowhere. I remember when he joined and he started doing stuff, and it was like it blew up ever since. But he does a lot of character stuff now. It's super cool stuff. He's made a style for himself, and he's selling stuff through Super Rare, which is really neat to see. Yeah, there's one thing that I always worry about when I see big artists take a leap outside of Fortnite stuff when they came into the field from Fortnite stuff is a lot of times they tend to just fade off and they don't do anything with what they do. They take their skills elsewhere, but then they just kind of lose touch with everything. For Christian, he didn't do that. He actually pushed through that, and now he's doing stuff where now it's like a full recognizable style for himself, which is like easily one of the only that type of stuff is just the happiest thing to see, especially for me. When someone can push through this one fear, especially for artists that come into the Fortnite field or any video game field, is like, oh well, everyone follows me for this. What happens if I do something different and no one follows with it? Especially for his case, that didn't happen, and it's awesome to see. But besides that, there's this one other guy that I really like to look at. His name is Mohammed Kaheen, I think that's how you say his name. He's like this 3D modeler who does a lot of character art and stuff like that for websites, and his stuff is awesome. Like it's one of the coolest styles I've ever seen. Super simple stuff, but he makes his really unique character styles for 3D modeling.
Huh. So you have multiple different inspirations, like you said, with multiple different fields.
Yeah, I kind of looked through a lot of stuff, and try to figure out, what some stuff to look at, who could help with
Yeah.
certain things for inspiration. So I tend to look through
Yeah, I
it
mean,
all.
I think I'd have a similar answer to yours because, like you, I delve into a lot of communities. One is editing, one is 3D. I also like look into graphic designing. I'm not a graphic designer myself, but I look at a lot of work from there. But yeah, 3D animation, editing, overall artistry is really cool to me. And I have
Yeah.
different inspirations in every step of the industry, so to speak. Um, Okay, next up, Rose Dosta, or no, just Dosta YD asks, how did you get to where you are today?
It's funny that you mentioned that. Dosta, the guy that replied, is actually someone that I've known since the beginning. He was in the first team that I was in. We were good friends. That man is probably one of the reasons where I am today. Super good friend of mine. We don't talk as much anymore, but that guy, he easily like one of the day ones I've ever had in this community. But oh wait, what was the question? I kind of
He says, how
went off
did
on
you
my
get
own.
to where you are today?
Yeah, so it's just like, going through headers and then moving on to thumbnails, making connections, working with people, just through teams, really. I mean, one thing I feel like if you're a smaller artist, you should always try to be a part of something bigger, like a team or a group, because that way you're benefiting off of something that could help get you more exposure, but it could also help them get more exposure. So it's a win win for both of you. And it could really push someone's career sometimes just being in a certain team. So I don't know why a lot of artists don't like it. I don't see why they wouldn't want, especially if they're small, because it could help build what they're trying to build, but faster and better. That's one thing I'd always recommend. It's just to be in some kind of team.
Uh-huh. So, I mean, I always tell people who are starting out to make connections like you did, but also market themselves properly, like brand themselves properly, give, yourself the recognition. Nobody is inclined to recognize you. You need to do everything yourself. So
That's
that's what
true.
I
You
tell
need to stand
people.
out.
You until you market yourself, bring yourself to the mainstream media, then nobody has an obligation to do that for you. Sometimes you're lucky, you get recognized by people, not all the time though. So yeah.
hmm Yeah, you just gotta make a name for yourself.
And the final question comes from my good friend Shade. And he asks, will he ever delve into the Valorant community? Because this guy is a Valorant editor.
Oh yeah, I do a ton of stuff for Valorant already. I do a lot of thumbnails for it for certain clients. I don't promote it as much because I don't really. My community's not faced towards Valorant, but I've done a lot of Valorant stuff for people like Myth. When Valorant was just starting to pop off, and I do stuff for this guy named Cal, super cool guy. Green, he also goes by.
Oh yeah, I know Green.
Um,
He used to make
yeah, X Green.
tutorials when I started editing. He was red green back then, and
Yeah. Oh,
his
this is when it
tutorials
was a
were
great.
the reason how I learned Element 3D, time remap, color
Hell
corrections, all
yeah.
of that stuff.
Yeah, I did. I do a lot of thumbnails. Well, before I closed my stuff off for a while, I did a lot of Valorant stuff for him, and so I there's a lot of times where I'm in a lot of fields. I just don't talk about it.
hmm So you are already in the Valorant community. What's
Yeah,
some
kind of.
like who are some people you work for?
Honestly, just usually it was. Well, I don't take commissions right now, so I haven't really worked with a lot of new people. But when I did stuff for Valorant, all I did was really stuff for Cal and Myth. That was about it before I closed it off. But there were some people still asking me about it. I just never really got the time to work on it.
Perfect. All right. Well, that wraps the podcast for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you to Blizzy for taking time out of his day. A very busy schedule, I assume. Obviously, you have a lot to do with all your clients and stuff. So I really appreciate
Yeah, man.
you taking
I
your
appreciate
time.
you having me.
I mean, it was an honor, man. It's always good to have people who have experience in the field that they work in, and inspire me specifically. So it's this is why I'm so grateful that the podcast blew up. It gives me a chance to sit down and talk with people that motivate me and that inspire me. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for being such a great artist to look up to. And
Appreciate it, man.
No problem. All right. I'll see you all next week. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. But yeah. Thank you for coming once again, Blizzy. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.